Hello and welcome to another episode of Tuesdays with Morrissey. I'm your host, Adam Morrissey. Today I'm thrilled to be joined by hospitality industry legend and good friend Jaime Bravo. Jaime is the general manager of Bardo Group. It's a boutique hospitality firm based in Tulum. Forbes Mexico described a stay at one of their hotels as transformational. Before Bardo, Jaime was trained at the Glion Institute of Higher Education and worked at the Ritz-Carlton, Los Angeles, and Hong Kong. Jaime, what is going on?
How are you, Adam? Nice to be here again. Thank you for having us.
No, thanks for being here. You know, Jaime, I hear a lot about places like Tulum for the hospitality industry and growing trends, you know, at least over the last 5 years or so. Are there other places that you're watching as growing hospitality markets?
Most definitely. We have an eye open because we have the intention of growth. But there's nothing like Tulum, and I think that I was doing that mistake before. I was looking for places like Tulum instead of places that could have a soul of their own, that could develop into something attractive for the younger travelers, the travelers that are more interested in boutique hospitality, such as towns like Tulum. I found places in Asia, specifically in Philippines and Indonesia. Palawan, for example, and Bali are the greatest exponents of boutique hospitality on that side of the world, even though those locations are also predominant, have a very strong presence of corporate hospitality. Other places, I'm from Costa Rica, so Costa Rica is growing a lot to specific regions. Nosara, that it's in the Pacific North Coast, and Santa Teresa as well. That's grown drastically in the last 5 years. And here in Mexico, there are a plethora of places that I found very attractive. More the one I like the most, and where I would actually think that the wind is heading in that direction stronger, would be Todos Santos. It's a magical town 45 minutes north of San Jose del Cabo in the Pacific. It's beautiful. It's like the desert meeting the ocean, so it's quite beautiful.
Yeah, you mentioned, you know, originally looking for places that are like Tulum, not necessarily looking for places like Tulum. What characteristics or criteria are you really looking for in new boutique hotel hospitality destinations?
Well, there are a few indicators. The ones I'm mostly attractive is the rawness of nature. That would be the main element. Another key element could be a presence of culture. So, for example, there's this town in Mexico called Oaxaca. Mm-hmm. Its culture is so deeply rooted in that space that doing a boutique hotel there makes a lot of sense, because then the target of what you want as a hotelier to express is the culture of the place you're living. If you go to a natural place, and what my personal preference, you showcase the nature of that specific place. But nature and culture, those would be my two main indicators.
Yeah, excellent. So, you know, I've been traveling a little bit recently. It very much seems that we're coming out of the COVID era. Have you noticed any consumer preferences changing since COVID?
Yes, definitely. So I was reading an article by Arne Sorensen, former CEO of Marriott International. May he rest in peace. He said that COVID was more of a crisis. It was a greater crisis than 2001 and 2009 combined. Mm. So for the hospitality industry, it really shook it to the core, and I think the trends have changed both from the hotel aspect and also the customers. But to answer your question specifically, the customers, I think I believe we all learned a couple of lessons during COVID, specifically valuing the present, valuing what's the nice, simple things in life, such as companionship, benevolence, love, exploration. So I see guests coming now more grateful to be here, not giving everything for granted, So there's more conscious. I see that happening. I also see other things happening as well. For example, the internet connection has to be more stable now because people have trended to work remote. So that's part of the reality. Maybe not on the romantic aspect, but on the grounds aspect. I have a lot of guests that come here and they work during their stay, and that's also shown in the average nights that guests stay with us. It's increased by 1.2, so from 3.8 to 5 nights. So those would be two main indicators: people coming here to work, not only the internet but everything that requires working, and the conscience and gratefulness of being here.
Yeah. When we've spoken in the past, we've talked about this conversation of the future of hotels being boutique. It seemed particularly true in COVID. Is that trend, do you see that trend continuing?
I think COVID accelerated the trend. So in a previous conversation, and I mentioned that I see boutique hospitality being in many ways the future of hospitality, because boutique hotels are small enough in order to have a heart. So they may not be as perfect or have as many standards as other great hotels, such as Four Seasons, Rosewood, Ritz-Carlton, that those are more focused on being precise, reliable, and luxury. Whereas boutique hotels they're beautiful. Design is always a big component, but the concept, whatever defines could be nature, could be culture, could be transformation. That audience has grown. I feel that was happening before COVID, and COVID just accelerated that, just because of what I mentioned before, echoing on what I said before. People are more grateful to be present when they're close to things they love. It could be a partner, it could be a friend, it could be nature, it could be exploring.
Yeah. What are some of the more corporate hotel chains like Marriott and Hilton to compete with some of these trends? Like, some of the things that come to my mind is, you see more of these corporate chains playing smaller, whether it's like the Autograph Collection, which is more personalized to the city, or Hilton's Canopy Collection, which is a little bit of a different model. What are you seeing the larger chains doing?
I think that in order for you to truly be boutique, you cannot be corporate. And this is not an attack on corporate. It's just my take on boutique hospitality. It can't have that many standards. So I see it happening. For example, Tulum is a town where there's maybe 300 hotels here. Many hotels are 2 rooms. There's one hotel that is by a chain. It was opened for a chain, and that's the A-Loft from Marriott. You walk into the A-Loft, and I'm coming from this background, so I walk into the Marriott and I see the brand standards. I see the signage that they need to have. They need to have at least X amount of signage in the lobby. They need to have these little perks in the room. So it's really good. It's really comfortable, but it kills the place where you're at. And even though they really try to have a sense of scenography, I think that gets lost more often than not, if not always, in the attempt of doing so. And it's also reflected in the rates. So the A-Loft is not a cheap build. It's done by Marriott. It's a well done hotel. The rates are on the lower 10% of hotels on their comp set. So yeah,
like the 10th percentile, like at the top.
No, sorry. On the 10th percentile on the bottom.
Okay.
So 90 percentile will be on the top, 10 percentile will be on the bottom.
Okay, interesting.
So it's super low. The rate in the A-Loft is around $100. In Bardo is around 500. Hotels in the beach could be 700.
Interesting. Oh, understood. So the building standards, I flipped that. They have building standards to promote efficiency and therefore can demand less per night.
No, I think that in order for you to build an A-Loft, it has so many standards that it ends up being much more expensive to do than a boutique hotel that wouldn't stand with a Aloft flag. And people pay that fee, let's say, or that price, because it's not only cost, it's also very complex to adhere with so many standards, that it works in cities, in places that are more massive, but places that are focused in boutique hospitality, they don't thrive. And the reason is, it doesn't matter how much money you can spend or how many Alofts hotels there are in the world, they miss the point of where they are.
Understood. So it's low because the demand's not really there. So if you were looking at it from like an investment standpoint, it wouldn't be very attractive because it's more expensive to build and it doesn't demand as high as nightly rates.
Exactly. And I think that, the radius is one indicator, one of the strongest indicators of how much people are willing to stay with you.
Yeah.
It could be because you have a beautiful beach in front. It could be because you have beautiful product. I think it's because you have beautiful service.
Sure. And when we're talking about trends and what drives consumer demand, what role does the internet and social media play in hospitality today?
I think that social media is massive for the 2022 in general. I think it plays that role that's already massive, enlightens in boutique hospitality. And the reason why, it's because it's the marketing. It's places, in order for you to be appealing or cool, you need to go off the beaten path. So here come the influencers that are exploring, and they're influencing other people now. So they have a larger influence in places that are smaller, not as known, and sexy. And by sexy, I mean, like I said before, nature or culture. That's my take on what makes a place worth for boutique hospitality sexy.
It's always an interesting phenomenon. You know, you get these people that go off the beaten path, then promote it, and then it becomes mainstream. Kind of comes full circle with that.
I agree completely with what you just said.
Yeah. How do you think the influencer culture impacts the culture of these boutique hospitality locations?
The location as a whole, I think it makes it more mainstream. Exactly what you said. So in a sense, yeah, they promote it and they influence travelers to come. But there is a risk that it's often the case where people start coming to this magical place, wherever it could be, not for the place itself, but for the picture of Instagram.
Yeah.
So those people don't add to the soul of the place, and they don't have the openness to truly experience that place. But at the same time, it increases the demand, for sure.
Tremendously, yeah. So is that part of like the boutique hospitality developers' main missions, to find the next frontier, whether it's in the Philippines or in Costa Rica or in other areas of Mexico or elsewhere in the world?
I would say that a true boutique hotelier, that should be the mission. Find what's the next best place to show the world and welcome guests. And then it's also our responsibility to, influencers per se it's not a bad thing. You just have to choose the right people to influence in the right way. So going back to your previous question, it's like, I work a lot with influencers, but every influencer I work with, I need to feel a strong alignment with what they're doing, whatever it is, and what I'm doing. It's not because they have 1 million followers that I want to work with them. I oftentimes like to work with influencers, Instagrammers that have a following base of 200,000, 300,000, not millions.
What about podcast hosts with like about 800?
Well, that'd be fantastic. I'm all about that.
Very good. We've talked about before. You talked about the experience being equally as important as the building. You know, with hotels being such a highly operational form of real estate, like what are the keys to building high performing teams and driving that experience for the guests?
Having a culture having a concept first. I think the main thing is to have a concept, and from that concept you design a space thinking of a specific service. So once you have the concept, you build the place, the hotel, then you build your team. This team has to really be connected with that concept, and that's done only in my book. It can only be done through culture, um, heartfelt culture. For example, here we have a little card called the black card, and it's our culture. So we have like steps of service, and we have service principles, and it's interesting for me. We have 15 service principles, of which three have to do, out of the 15, three have to do with actually being a hotelier. The rest is how you manage yourself as a human being. So, and I was inspired a lot by books I read that have nothing to do with hospitality, such as 12 Rules for Life by Jordan B. Peterson.
Of course. Yeah. How much of it is finding the right people versus the training?
That's a great question. So you need fertile soil. No, and fertile soil would be defined as someone that has sufficient experience to understand whatever has to be understood. But more importantly, you need to have someone willing to learn. The attitude doesn't add up to the equation. It's a multiplier to the value of this specific lady or gentleman. So I think it's not of who the person is. It's what you can do together once you meet.
Sure. I asked that question once to a business coach I was working with, and he just took me to school. He said, when it comes to looking at identifying talent versus training, he says, when you're looking for talent, treat that part of the equation like it's the only thing that matters. Then once they've joined your team, treat the training as if it's the only thing that matters. And I said, well played, sir.
Well played. I wish I had that answer in my book, but most definitely I won't.
Hey, it's yours now.
Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing.
One of the things I've been curious about is, Jaime, obviously, you're fueled by a vision for authentic experiences, nature, and culture. What is it about the hotel industry and boutique hospitality that's meaningful for you?
Precisely that it is meaningful. You can chase something that has a soul. So, for example, I'll speak a little bit of hospitality as I see it here now in the hotel I'm working at. So it's the group. It's called Bardot Group, and we currently have 2 hotels. We're making another one, and to say it simply and shortly, we're telling poems through the hotels we do. So the first hotel is called Una Vida. That's one life in Spanish. And the concept of that hotel is that you're living one life, and what's going to be, how are you going to play this? No? How are you going to play out your one life to take the most out of it? Kind of, you only live once. So in the development of the concept of the second hotel, we were thinking, what comes after one life? Well, according to the Buddhists, Tibetan Buddhists, after death and before reincarnation, there's this state of transformation called Bardot. So that's why the second hotel is called Bardot, and it's a place of transformation. So we're chasing transformation. We're a blank slate for whatever the transformation needs to be and wants to be. Or I'm not going to tell you what you need to transform. That's for every guest to choose. It could be doing the temazcal or yoga or sound healing, or it could be staying in your villa, private villa, writing or reading a book, or it could be experiencing nightlife in Tulum with an intention. And the third hotel we're doing, it's called Milan, and that's the of Bardot. Bardots, there's 6 states of Bardot. The second one is called Milan, and it's the Bardot of Lucid Dreams. So the scenography there will be Dare to Dream. What's your dream? I was once asked by a friend called Saeed. He asked me, what's your dream? And I went on a 5-minute pitch telling him what my dream was. And he was like, okay, great. What's your dream in one sentence? And that was mind-blowing. I thought about that for a week, and then I was so excited. It's like I finally have my dream in one sentence, and that was really meaningful for me. So my idea is to give meaning to the people working in these hotels, having that drive to connect emotionally with the guests that are coming. So it's a win-win for us that we work here, through our concept and a little poem and a story. But the end goal is to have an emotional connection with our guests and with ourselves through our work.
Bravo, man. Very cool. Thank you for sharing that. Are there any trends? We talked about a couple. Are there any other trends that you're watching in hospitality today?
Well, you always need to be putting your eye out for trends. Let me think. I think there's just a massive thirst of guests looking for true, meaningful encounters with people, with nature, with new cultures. So I think that it's not necessarily a new trend, it's just a growing trend, for sure. Well, what I mentioned before, that Wi-Fi has never been more important. There's also a trend in exploring. I've read this in a couple of articles. Before, many years ago, luxury hospitality was having, it could be luxury corporate hospitality or corporate boutique hospitality. Luxury was defined by having a French restaurant in your hotel, wherever that hotel was. Now it's eating the food of the place you're at. So that's super interesting, and I'm having a fantastic time with my chefs developing new ways to express the dishes that have been served in the Yucatan Peninsula forever now. So it's always a game, it's a challenge, and sometimes they get creative, sometimes I get creative. More so they get creative. But yeah, that's another trend. And another thing of trends, it's also important to have an eye out for trends, but never having both eyes for trends, because I think hospitality, you also need to keep an eye fixed on the basics, and the basics are smiling, greeting someone by their name, not because it's a script, but because it's meaningful. No, what's great. That is what drives an emotional connection. So one eye out for innovation, and one eye fixed in the basics.
Awesome. Any reading materials or publications that you'd recommend to listeners trying to keep up on both the basics and the trends?
I have a newsletter from Design Hotels. That funny it is. Marriott just purchased Design Hotels. Very briefly, this portfolio I do respect, and they're truly boutique, and they're owned by Marriott. I respect Design Hotels mostly because it's a boutique hotel, and then once the hotel is done, they sign up to this portfolio, but there are no brand standards. So I think the only brand standard is that you have to have a nice design, creative and precise. So that's a boutique group by Marriott.
They have a newsletter.
I think it's actually, they have a newsletter. So yeah, to answer your question, their newsletter is quite good. I always read Condé Nast, Rob's report, and New York Times Traveler. New York Times Traveler is good as well. They have interesting takes. And Condé Nast, they just make so many rankings out of everything that there's so many places that I've never heard of. So that's a place to find new places, find new restaurants, find new hotels. So I would say those are my top go-to.
Excellent, man. Well, I appreciate you making the time to join for this conversation and the presence, passion, and soul you bring to your work and life.
Thank you very much, Adam. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. Talk soon, Jaime.
Talk to you soon.